What if I told you that a life was being lost right under the nose of an entire city, and nobody noticed, while everyone went about their routine, ignoring the obvious? A simple man, one of those whom no one notices, who goes unnoticed every single day, saw something that everyone else chose not to see. And what he found changed everything. Stay with me until the end, because this story will make you rethink how many times you've passed by someone invisible and missed the chance to make a difference. He had been delivering mail for 23 years on the same rural route in the interior of North Carolina. Every day, the same route, the same rusty mailboxes, the same dirt roads. Tom Harris was just another invisible worker. You know, the kind of person who blends into the landscape? The kind you see but don't really perceive. That's him. But on that October day, everything changed. Something was different at the old abandoned farm at the end of the road. Curtains moved. And what Tom discovered behind that locked door sent the police, the firefighters, and the entire town of Millbrook rushing there in desperation. This is the true story of how a mailman, ignored by everyone, became a hero and saved a life no one knew existed. A life that was struggling, surviving, waiting, while the world kept turning as if nothing was happening. Have you ever stopped to think about how many stories are hidden right in front of you? How many people are screaming in silence, waiting for someone, anyone to pay attention? Tom saw. He chose not to ignore it, and that decision transformed not only the life of an abandoned child, but an entire community. But before I tell you what was inside that farm, the secret that almost died there, you need to understand who Tom Harris was, why no one believed him when he tried to ask for help, and why the courage of an ordinary man can be all that separates a tragedy from a miracle. What you are about to discover may surprise you, move you, and perhaps inspire you to pay more attention to the little things around you, because sometimes saving a life begins with a simple look. And before I continue this story that will move you, I need to ask you something. If you already feel that this message resonates with you, that this story is touching some part of your heart, leave a comment below. Tell me, have you ever been in a situation where you noticed something that everyone else ignored? Or was there someone in your life who was invisible until the moment they made a difference? I read all the comments, and your stories not only inspire me, but inspire thousands of people who come here. And look, if you're enjoying this content, leave a like below. It may seem like a small gesture, but that's what makes this video reach more people. Someone who might need to hear exactly this message today. Your like isn't just a number, it's a way to spread this story of courage, of care, of humanity. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now and activate the notification bell, because every week I bring real stories like this, of ordinary people who did extraordinary things, who chose to see when everyone else closed their eyes. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content. It's what keeps alive this current of empathy, inspiration, and the reminder that each of us has the power to change a life. So, comment, like, subscribe, and let's build together a community that pays attention, cares, and acts. Now let's go back to Tom Harris's story, because you need to understand who this man was before that fateful day in October. What made him special wasn't superhuman strength, money, or fame. It was something much simpler and much more powerful. Tom Harris was 54 years old and had been driving the same yellow mail truck for over 2 decades along the dirt roads of rural North Carolina. He woke up every day at 5 in the morning, drank his black coffee without sugar, put on his faded blue uniform, and set off to face the 127 stops on Route 7. It was a journey he knew like the back of his hand. Every pothole, every dog barking behind the fence, every rusty mailbox. It was all part of his silent, predictable routine. Tom was one of those invisible workers, you know, the kind of person you see every day but never really notice. He was part of the landscape, like an old tree in the middle of the road or a faded sign on the side of the road. But there was something about Tom that most people didn't notice, a rare quality, almost extinct these days. Tom paid attention. And when I say attention, I don't mean that distracted glance we give each other while scrolling on our phones. It was real attention, that genuine presence that notices details, that senses when something is out of place, that perceives when silence speaks louder than 1,000 words. He noticed when Mrs. Henderson didn't collect her mail for 2 days in a row and knocked on her door to make sure everything was all right. He noticed when Mr. Martinez's newspaper started piling up on the porch and called his son to let him know. Tom cared. And that, my friend, makes all the difference. We live in a world where everyone is too busy, too connected, too distracted. We pass by people as if they were ghosts. We don't look into the eyes of the person serving us at the supermarket checkout. We don't ask how the neighbor we haven't seen in weeks is doing. We don't pay attention to the signs, the subtle changes, the silent cries for help. The hidden truth is that we are all so immersed in our own lives, in our own worries, that we have lost the ability to see the other person. And it was precisely this mentality, or rather the absence of it, that almost cost a life. Tom was different. He saw, he felt, he acted, and that inner transformation, that conscious decision to be present in the world, to see beyond the surface, was what made him a hero. It wasn't physical strength, it wasn't money, it wasn't status. It was simply the daily choice to pay attention, to care when it would be easier to ignore, to investigate when it would be more convenient to pass by. That journey of mindfulness, of genuine human connection, was what separated Tom Harris from anyone else in that city. But back to that October day. At the end of Route 7, right at the last stop before the forest began to swallow. The road, there was a place everyone avoided looking at, a place laden with forgotten memories and unsolved mysteries. The old Whitmore farm was located at the end of Route 7, right at the last stop before the forest completely swallowed the road. It was one of those places that carry stories in their bones, peeling walls, a half-collapsed roof, weeds growing up to the porch as if nature were trying to reclaim what was once hers. The property had been abandoned for 8 years, ever since. Old Earl Whitmore died without heirs. No one wanted to buy that isolated piece of land, far from everything and everyone. The farm had become just a ghostly memory of better times, a landmark in the rural landscape that everyone knew, but no one really looked at. For Tom Harris, that farm was just a landmark on his daily route. He passed by it every single day. There was never any mail, obviously. It was just that mental moment of, after Whitmore Farm, I turn the truck around and go back to town. An automatic routine, an autopilot that had worked perfectly for years. But 3 weeks ago, something started to change. And when I say something, I mean those almost imperceptible details that most people would never notice. But Tom wasn't most people. First, there was a faint light at night. Tom was driving late from a barbecue at his sister's house when he passed the farm and saw a subtle glow coming from inside. It was quick, almost like a reflection. He thought it was his own car's headlights hitting the broken glass, creating that optical illusion. He shook his head and kept driving. Then, a few days later, there were the footprints. Recent footprints in the mud near the rusty gate. They weren't animal footprints. They were clearly human shoes, small and delicate. Tom stopped the truck that day, watched for a few minutes, felt that tightness in his chest that comes when something isn't right. But what was he going to do? Call the police because he saw footprints on an abandoned farm? They would laugh at him. So Tom began to pay even closer attention. Every day as he passed Whitmore Farm, he slowed down. He observed the windows, the door, the surroundings. He searched for signs, for any revelation that would confirm or rule out that strange feeling growing in the pit of his stomach. Tom's journey had transformed. What had once been a mechanical routine was now a silent investigation. He was dealing with a hidden truth that no one else could see, a mystery that pulsed within that forgotten property. And then came that Tuesday in October, 2:37 in the afternoon. The sky was overcast, that heavy grey that precedes rain. Tom was making the final turn before turning the truck around when it happened. He swore, and when Tom Harris swore something, you could believe him. He swore he saw a curtain move in the second-story window. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't his imagination. It was a deliberate movement, as if someone had been peeking out and quickly hid upon noticing the yellow truck. Tom's heart raced violently in his chest. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He slammed on the brakes. The truck stopped in the middle of the dirt road, kicking up a cloud of dust. Tom stood there, motionless, staring intently at that second-story window. All his instincts screamed the same thing. Someone's in there, someone's living on that farm. And this discovery was about to trigger a series of decisions and transformations that would change not only Tom's life, but the entire surrounding community. If you're as invested in this story as I am in telling it, subscribe to the channel now. You're part of this journey of real discoveries, of stories that touch the soul and remind us of the impact that attention and courage can have. But what Tom did next defied all the rules. Something that could have cost him his job. And it was precisely this courageous decision that sparked the most improbable rescue that town had ever seen. Tom picked up his cell phone, his hands still trembling, and dialed the county sheriff's number. After 3 rings, Sheriff Morrison's tired voice answered on the other end of the line. Tom took a deep breath and said directly, without beating around the bush, "Sheriff, there's someone at the Whitmore farm." There was a pause. That kind of silence that comes before someone tells you you're crazy. And then came the predictable answer. "Tom, that place has been abandoned. For years it must be raccoons or possums, some wild animal, you know how it is." Tom felt frustration rising in his throat. "I saw the curtain move, and there are fresh footprints in the mud near the gate. Human footprints, Sheriff." On the other end, Morrison let out a heavy sigh. "Look, Tom, I appreciate your concern, I really do, but I can't send a patrol car there because of a curtain that moved. It was probably the wind. Do you know how many calls I get every day from people seeing things?" Tom hung up the phone with that bitter feeling of not being taken seriously. He was just the mailman, after all. The invisible guy who delivers the mail. What could he possibly know about an investigation or real danger? The transformation happening inside him was painful. That moment when you realize your voice has no weight, your observations don't matter, you're easily disposable in the system. But Tom didn't give up. He called the post office, trying to report the situation to his supervisor. The response was even more cutting. "Tom, you have 84 overdue deliveries. Continue your route. Now." Click. They hung up on him. He sat there, inside the yellow truck, looking out the fogged window toward that farm that held secrets. He felt like an idiot, invisible again. That feeling of being ignored, of having his concerns minimized, of not being seen as someone capable of perceiving the world around him. But there was something inside him, a deep voice, an instinct that came from years of silent attention, from years observing lives through letters and newspapers and small details, that screamed, "This isn't right. Something is very wrong in that place." And it was at that moment that Tom Harris made a decision that would change everything. A decision that went against all the rules, against all the guidance he had received in 23 years of his profession. He looked at the clock on the truck's dashboard. He looked at the pile of undelivered mail. He looked at the Whitmore farm, with its empty windows and moving curtains. And then, for the first time in more than 2 decades working for the post office, Tom Harris got out of the truck and decided to investigate on his own. This journey of solitary courage is something most of us avoid. It's easier to trust the authorities, follow the rules, not meddle where we're not wanted. But Tom was experiencing an inner revelation. He realized that sometimes the right mindset isn't to follow protocol, it's to follow one's conscience. And his conscience was screaming that a life might be at stake. The impact of this decision wasn't yet clear, but the behind-the-scenes story was about to be exposed in a way no one could have imagined. He crossed the dirt road, feeling his heart pound in his chest with each step. The rusty gate creaked as he pushed. The tall grass brushed against his trousers as he walked toward the house. Each step was a choice. Each meter traveled was an affirmation that he trusted. His instincts more than the voices that tried to silence him. Now what Tom was about to discover as he approached that abandoned house would confirm all his worst fears and reveal a truth so shocking that it would forever change how that town viewed the invisible. Tom stepped through the rusty gate, each step on the dry grass making a sound that seemed to echo for miles. The silence of that place was heavy, almost suffocating. His heart pounded like a drum in his chest, so loudly he was sure anyone inside the house could hear it. Adrenaline coursed through his veins, mixed with fear and determination. He didn't know exactly what he expected to find, but he knew he couldn't ignore it any longer. The journey there had been one of pure courage, and now he was face to face with the hidden truth that everyone else had chosen not to see. As Tom drew closer to the porch, he stopped abruptly, his eyes fixed on the front door. There was something strange about it. The door was closed, but not in the normal way you'd expect from an abandoned house. It had a makeshift lock, made of pieces of wood and wire, and the detail that chilled Tom's blood was realizing the lock was on the inside. Someone had locked that door from the inside. Someone was living there. Someone was hiding. The revelation was like a punch to the gut. This wasn't vandalism. This wasn't casual trespassing. This was survival. Tom walked slowly around the house, trying not to make unnecessary noise. The floorboards of the porch creaked under his feet. When he reached the back of the property, he saw something that definitively confirmed his suspicions and broke his heart at the same time. There was a small vegetable garden there, makeshift, clearly made by inexperienced hands but functional. Red tomatoes hung on crooked stakes, lettuce plants began to sprout, beans planted in uneven rows. Someone was planting, someone was eating, someone was surviving on that farm forgotten by God and man. The impact of that discovery was devastating. How many days? How many weeks? How long had that person been there fighting alone not to starve to death? Tom felt tears burning in his eyes. He cleared his throat and called out, trying to keep his voice steady. "Is anyone there?" The silence that followed was deafening. Nothing. Not a sigh. Not a movement. Only the wind blowing through the trees and the distant creak of a loose door. Tom took a deep breath and approached the back door. He knocked lightly. 3. Soft, non-threatening knocks. "Hello? It's Tom from the post office. I don't mean to hurt anyone, I just want to know if everything's all right." His voice trembled despite his effort to sound calm and trustworthy. And then it happened. That's when Tom heard it. A muffled sound coming from inside the house. A stifled, choked cry, as if someone were desperately trying not to make a sound. It was the kind of cry that comes from someone who is terrified, who has cried so much that they have no more. Strength but cannot stop. And what broke Tom's heart into 1,000 pieces was realizing the origin of that sound. It wasn't an adult. The tone, the fragility, the way the cry wavered, everything pointed to a single devastating conclusion. It was a child. There was a child living alone on that abandoned farm. A child growing their own food. A child hiding from the world. A child crying behind that door, terrified by the presence of a stranger. That moment completely transformed Tom's mindset. It was no longer about confirming a suspicion or proving he was right. It was about saving a life. It was about being the difference between death and hope for someone the whole world had forgotten. The behind-the-scenes story of that discovery revealed an absurd systemic failure. How could a child remain invisible for so long? How did no one notice? How did the safety net fail so completely? If your heart is heavy right now, if you're feeling the same urgency that Tom felt, subscribe to the channel. You're part of this community that believes every life matters, that no child should be invisible, that one person's attention can save an entire world. But what Tom was about to discover about that child and how she got there would expose an even deeper tragedy, a story of abandonment, despair, and a courage impossible to ignore. On the other side of the door, a small, broken voice shattered the silence like a muffled cry. "Please, don't send me away." Tom felt his blood run cold. Those words carried so much fear, so much despair, so much accumulated loneliness that it was impossible not to feel their impact reverberating in his chest. He slowly approached the crack in the back door, trying to see through the cracked wood. And then he saw. Through the small opening between the planks, a face appeared. It was a boy, appearing to be about 10 years old, too thin for his age, with dirty, torn clothes that looked like they hadn't been changed in weeks. But what struck Tom most were the eyes, large, wide, overflowing with a fear so profound it seemed to have roots in the child's soul. Tom knelt on the porch to get down to the boy's level and softened his voice as much as he could. Hey, calm down, kid. I'm not going to send you away. I just want to help, okay? What's your name?" There was a long pause. The boy looked at Tom with the distrust of someone who has been abandoned too much to easily believe an adult's words. Then, almost in a whisper, he answered, "Lucas." The name came out with difficulty, as if he had forgotten what it was like to say his own name aloud to another person. Tom smiled gently, trying to build a bridge of trust. "Lucas, how long have you been here?" Another silence. The boy looked at the ground, at his own dirty hands, anywhere but Tom's face. "I don't know. I think about 2 months." 2 months. The words hit Tom like a hammer. 2 months. A child, alone, on an abandoned farm, surviving on a makeshift garden and rainwater. The revelation was so absurd, so impossible to process, that Tom had to fight the urge to break down that door immediately and drag the boy away. But he knew he needed to take it slow. He needed to gain Lucas's trust. So he took a deep breath and asked the question he already knew would have a devastating answer. "Where are your parents, Lucas?" And that's when the boy broke down. Tears began to stream down his dirty face as he sobbed, trying to form words through his crying. "My mother, she was sick. She told me to stay hidden here. She said that if anyone found out, they would take me away. They would put me in a bad place where I would never see her again." Lucas wiped his face with the sleeve of his torn shirt and continued, his voice breaking with each word. "She went to get medicine. She said she would be back in 2 days, but she didn't come back. I waited a long time, and she didn't come back." Tom felt tears burning his own eyes. The emotional transformation happening inside him was profound and irreversible. He was no longer just a curious postman. He was that boy's only connection to the world, the only hope that someone cared, that someone had seen him. That boy was surviving alone, terrified, thinking he would be taken to some terrible place if anyone discovered his existence. The distorted mindset that his mother, probably amidst despair and illness, had planted in his head was that the world outside was worse than loneliness. And Lucas believed it. He stayed there, hidden, planting tomatoes, collecting rainwater, waiting for a mother who would never return. The truth hidden behind that door was more painful than Tom could have imagined. The backstory revealed not just the abandonment of a child, but an entire system that had failed. A sick mother who didn't have access to proper treatment, a child who wasn't registered in any school, a community that passed by that farm every day and never paid enough attention. Tom swallowed the lump in his throat and said with all the sincerity he could muster, "Lucas, open the door. I'll help you, I promise." But convincing Lucas to open that door would only be the beginning of a rescue that would mobilize an entire city and reveal lessons that none of us should forget. It took Lucas 15 minutes to trust Tom. 15 minutes of gentle conversation through the crack in the door, of genuine promises, of a patience that only someone who truly cares can have. Tom told him about his work, about the dogs on the route, about how he passed by there every day and had noticed the footprints, the light, the curtain. And little by little, word by word, the barrier of fear began to crumble. When Lucas finally unlocked that makeshift door and slowly opened it, the impact of what Tom saw was devastating. The boy was dehydrated, his lips cracked, his skin pale. There were cuts on his bare feet, probably from walking barefoot through the farm full of broken glass and rusty nails. He was clearly malnourished, his bones protruding under his dirty shirt, but there was something stronger there, something that neither hunger nor abandonment could extinguish. Lucas was alive, resilient, strong in a way that children shouldn't need to be. Tom wasted no time. He grabbed his cell phone, his hands trembling, and dialed emergency services. This time, his voice wasn't that of someone pleading. It was that of someone demanding action. They wouldn't accept no for an answer. There was no room for doubt or bureaucratic protocols. "There's a child here, alone for months, at Whitmore Farm at the end of Route 7. Send an ambulance, social services, and police, now." The urgency in Tom's voice pierced any resistance on the other end of the line. In less than 20 minutes, Whitmore Farm was surrounded by police cars, an ambulance, and social workers. The place that had been invisible for 8 years suddenly became the center of all the city's attention. The news spread through the community like wildfire. People left their homes, called each other, and posted on social media. "There's a child on the abandoned farm. The mailman found him. He saved a life." Throughout the chaos, while paramedics assessed Lucas, while social workers asked questions, while police searched the property trying to understand how it had happened, Tom stayed by the boy's side the whole time. He held Lucas's small, dirty hand tightly, as if saying without words, "I won't abandon you. You're not alone anymore." The paramedics tried to take him to the ambulance, but Lucas clung to Tom desperately. It was Tom who calmed the boy, who convinced him that those people were there to help, that no one was going to hurt him. "You're incredibly brave, kid, braver than any adult I know, and everything will be all right now. I promise." Lucas looked at Tom with those big eyes, still swollen from crying, and said something that would be etched into Tom Harris's soul forever. Something that summed up the entire tragedy of that story and all the transformation it would bring about. "You're the first person who saw me." 6 words. But those 6 words carried the weight of 2 months of absolute solitude, of days and nights waiting for someone who never returned, of silent cries that no one heard. That revelation broke the hearts of everyone there. How can a child be so invisible? How can a life go unnoticed in the 21st century, in a small town where everyone supposedly knows everyone else? Tom Harris's journey up to that point had been one of persistent attention, individual courage, and decisions that defied common sense. But Lucas's journey had been one of pure survival, of impossible resilience, of a hope that refused to die even when everything pointed to the contrary. The hidden truth behind this story was that there are thousands of Lucases out there, invisible children, forgotten adults, lives that scream silently while the world rushes by. And the difference between life and death, between despair and hope, is often just one person choosing to pay attention. If this story is affecting you, if you feel you need to do something different from now on, subscribe to the channel. You are part of this community that believes in the power of seeing the invisible, of hearing the silence, of acting when it would be easier to ignore. But Lucas's story was only beginning. The physical rescue had taken place, but the emotional and social aspects of this tragedy still needed to be uncovered. The police worked all night to piece together that tragedy, and when the full story finally came to light, the impact was even more devastating than anyone could have imagined. Lucas's mother was named Sarah Bennett. She was a 32-year-old woman who had struggled her entire life with drug addiction and untreated mental health issues. Sarah had no family, no support network, no one. And when Lucas was born, she did the best she could, but the best of someone without resources, without treatment, without hope is rarely enough. They lived on the streets, in temporary shelters, in borrowed cars, until Sarah found Whitmore Farm, abandoned, hidden, perfect. For Sarah, that farm represented a chance, an opportunity to give her son something she never had, a roof over her head, a safe place, a sense of home. She kept him hidden there, not out of cruelty, but out of fear, a visceral, often justified fear that social services would find out and take Lucas away from her. Sarah had heard stories, real and exaggerated, of children torn from loving mothers, but whom the system deemed unsuitable. So she made a desperate choice. She hid her son. She taught him to be quiet, not to turn on lights, to plant food, to survive. But drug addiction is a disease that doesn't negotiate, and untreated mental health problems are a ticking time bomb. Sarah overdosed at a community clinic 2 counties away. She had gone there seeking help, perhaps trying to finally get clean so she could be the mother Lucas deserved. But she arrived too late. No identification, no documents, no one who knew her name. Sarah Bennett was declared Jane Doe, number 17, and buried as an indigent in a public cemetery. No one cried at the funeral. No one laid flowers. No one knew she had left a 10-year-old son waiting for her on an abandoned farm. And Lucas waited, day after day, week after week, eating the tomatoes he managed to plant from the seeds his mother had left, drinking rainwater he collected in old buckets, sleeping wrapped in moldy blankets, dreaming that his mother would return at any moment with medicine and food, and that tired smile she always gave when things improved a little. The solitary journey of that boy is something no child should ever know. The forced transformation from child to survivor. The distorted mentality that the outside world was the enemy and that decaying farm was safety. The hidden truth, revealed by the investigation, was even more painful. If Tom Harris hadn't noticed that curtain moving, no one knows how long Lucas would have survived. Maybe a few more days. Maybe a week. Winter was coming, and temperatures were already starting to drop at night. The garden wasn't producing enough. Rainwater was scarce. Lucas was on a countdown clock and didn't even know it. The behind-the-scenes story revealed a social system that had failed on every possible level. Sarah never received proper treatment. Lucas was never enrolled in school. The farm had been abandoned for 8 years, and no one from the city ever checked for squatters or vulnerable people. But then there was Tom, an invisible mailman who chose to see, who chose to care when it would have been easier to move on, who chose to trust his instincts when everyone said he was wrong. And that decision, that single decision to stop the truck and investigate, was the difference between life and death, between tragedy and miracle. The most important revelation in this story isn't just about Lucas or Sarah. It's about how many other Sarahs are out there fighting alone, how many other Lucases are hidden, invisible, waiting for someone who never returns, and how many of us pass by them every single day and choose not to see. But the transformation that this story brought to the town of Millbrook was only beginning, and what happened in the following days would forever change how that community viewed the invisible. The story of Lucas and Tom exploded. In 48 hours it became national news. Newspapers from New York to Los Angeles featured a photo of Tom Harris next to the thin, frightened boy he had saved. Television channels sent crews to Millbrook. Reporters knocked on Tom's door wanting interviews, and the most impressive thing was the response from the American people. Donations began arriving from all over the country. Money, clothes, toys, handwritten letters saying, "Thank you for seeing what we didn't see." A family from Millbrook, the Pattersons, a middle-aged couple who had lost their only son in a car accident years before, immediately began the adoption process for Lucas. They said that this boy had a place waiting for him, a room, a family, a life. But the most profound impact wasn't money or adoption. It was the transformation that happened in the collective mindset of that city and, in a way, the entire country. People began to notice something that had always been there but that no one wanted to admit. How many invisible people are we ignoring every single day? The mailman who goes unnoticed, delivering not only mail but observing entire lives through details that no one else notices. The cleaning lady who cleans the offices after everyone leaves, who sees the documents left on the desks, who notices when someone is working too late. The supermarket cashier who serves the same people every week and notices when someone stops showing up. The delivery person who knows the addresses by heart and notices when a house is different, when something isn't right. These people see things, they know things, but nobody listens, nobody asks, nobody considers that they might have valuable information, important observations, insights that could save lives. The hidden truth that Lucas's story exposed was this: we have built a society where millions of essential workers are treated like furniture, like part of the infrastructure, like robots that perform functions but have no eyes, ears, or hearts. And this collective decision to make people invisible has real consequences. Children die. The elderly are forgotten. People disappear, and nobody notices until it's too late. Tom Harris was honored by the governor of North Carolina in a moving ceremony at the Capitol. He received the Citizen of the Year award. There were cameras, applause, speeches praising his courage. But when they finally gave Tom the microphone and asked what he wanted to say, he didn't give a long or elaborate speech. Tom Harris, the unseen mailman who saved a life, went straight to the point with that brutal honesty that only genuine people can have. He looked at the assembled crowd and said, "Pay attention to everything. To the curtains that move, to the neighbors who disappear, to the children no one sees, to the elderly who stop leaving their homes, to the people who work around you every day and whom you treat like ghosts. Because sometimes saving a life is just paying attention. The silence that followed was deafening. It wasn't one of those awkward silences. It was a silence of collective revelation, of shared shame, of renewed commitment. People left that ceremony changed. The transformative journey that Tom had begun by stopping that yellow truck was now spreading like ripples on a lake. Millbrook created a community program to support the vulnerable. Mail carriers, delivery drivers, bus drivers, cleaning staff, everyone was invited too. Report anything unusual they noticed. Hotlines were created. Protocols were established. The entire city decided that no child would ever again be invisible. If you feel you need to be part of this change, that you need to start paying more attention to the people around you, subscribe to the channel now. Because you're part of this community that believes every life matters, that no human being should be invisible, that attention is a superpower we all possess. But Lucas's story doesn't end there. What happened in the following years would prove that the transformation was real, lasting and more beautiful than anyone could have imagined. Today, Lucas is 12 years old, and if you saw him walking down the street, you'd see a normal boy. He lives with the Pattersons in a yellow house with a porch on Elm Street, right in the center of Millbrook. He goes to school every day, gets good grades in math, plays baseball on the town's team, he's second base, and he's good. He has friends. He has a family that loves him unconditionally. He has a life. But if you look closer, you'll notice something special about that boy. A resilience in his eyes. A gratitude for life that most children his age don't yet know. Lucas knows what it's like to be invisible, and that's why he never lets anyone around him feel unseen. And every year, without fail, on his birthday, Lucas makes a point of visiting Tom Harris. It's a tradition. They have lunch together at the small town restaurant, the one that serves the best burgers in North Carolina. They talk about everything, about school, about baseball, about Lucas's plans for the future. They laugh at those inside jokes that only people with a shared history understand. And at the end, always Lucas looks at Tom and says, "Thank you for seeing me." And Tom, with that shy smile that never changed, replies, "Thank you for teaching me what really matters." Because the transformation didn't just happen in Lucas's life, it happened in Tom's life too. He realized that those 23 years delivering letters weren't invisible. They were preparation. They were training. They were the silent journey that prepared him for that crucial moment when a life would depend on his attention. Every decision to stop and talk to Mrs. Henderson, every time he noticed the newspaper piling up on Mr. Martinez's porch, every small act of attentiveness was building the mindset and sensitivity that would save Lucas. And Tom still drives that yellow truck down Route 7. He still wakes up at 5 in the morning. He still drinks black coffee without sugar. He still delivers mail at the same 127 stops. He's still invisible to most people he passes. But there's a difference now. Tom knows, and the town of Millbrook knows, that being invisible doesn't mean being insignificant. That humble work isn't worthless work. That sometimes the people who receive the least recognition are the ones who see the most hidden truth in our communities. He saved a life, not with superpowers, not with wealth, not with status or fame, but because you chose to see when it would have been easier to ignore. Because he trusted his instincts when everyone told him he was wrong. Because you paid attention when the whole world was distracted, and that choice, that simple and profound decision to be present in the world, to care about what happens beyond your own nose, was all that separated a tragedy from a miracle. The ultimate revelation of this story is that heroism doesn't come from grand gestures. It comes from small acts of kindness repeated day after day. It comes from truly looking at people, from asking, "How are you?" and waiting for a genuine answer. From noticing when something isn't right and having the courage to investigate even when told you're being paranoid. The impact of a life saved spreads in waves. Lucas will grow up and have children. He will teach them never to make anyone invisible. He will tell Tom Harris's story to future generations. And each of those people will be a little more attentive, a little more present, a little more human because of a curtain that moved one October afternoon. If this story resonated with you, if it touched on something you needed to hear today, leave a like below. It's not just for the algorithm, it's because when you like it, more people will see this message, more people will remember the power of paying attention. And look, if you've made it this far, write in the comments, "I see it too." Because I want to know that you're part of this community of people who choose to be present, who choose to care. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Every week I bring you real stories like this one, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, of moments that remind us of what really matters in life, stories that move you, that inspire you, that make you want to be a better version of yourself. There's a video over here that will show you another incredible story of courage and transformation. Click and continue with me there, because this journey of discovering the extraordinary in the ordinary is just beginning. See you in the next video, and remember, pay attention. You could be the next Tom Harris, you could make a difference in someone's life. Bye. And now it's time for you to do something with this story, because it can't just stay here.